Zane, buddy, please don't spill yogurt on your shirt. We're already 10 minutes late. Fletcher Cole muttered as he twisted in the driver's seat of his dented, sun-faded SUV and reached back to grab the half-open snack pouch from his 4-year-old son's lap. Zane, cheeks puffed out with strawberry yogurt, blinked up at him with wide eyes and managed a guilty, "Sorry, Daddy." Fletcher sighed, raking a hand through his messy brown hair as he glanced at the dashboard clock. It was already 8:26. If he didn't park in the next 2 minutes, he'd get another late notice from Zane's preschool, and they were clear that 3 strikes meant losing the spot. A single dad juggling 2 part-time jobs didn't have the luxury of losing anything. The parking lot was chaos. Every parent in downtown Seattle was apparently running late this morning. Fletcher spotted an open space near the front of the preschool, and his heart lifted until a sleek black Mercedes nosed toward the same spot from the opposite direction. He paused for half a second. The Mercedes had tinted windows, shining like obsidian under the morning sun. He could have gone for it. He could have beaten them, but something in him pulled back. Maybe it was the frantic energy of the driver, the way the car jerked slightly like the person behind the wheel was barely holding it together. Maybe it was just instinct. He reversed and waved her in. The car slid into the spot, and a woman stepped out, heels clicking on the pavement, long chestnut hair swinging behind her. She wore a navy pantsuit that looked like it cost more than his monthly rent and held a phone to her ear with one hand, her other clutching a leather folder. "Thanks," she said quickly, her voice breathless and rich, before disappearing through the preschool gates. Fletcher blinked at the empty spot, then shifted into gear and drove down the block to a metered space. He hoisted Zane out, yogurt and all, and sprinted the full 2 blocks to the school's entrance. By the time he reached the front desk, Zane's hair was a mess. Fletcher's shirt was damp with sweat, and they were officially 12 minutes late. Again. 3 days later, he saw her again. Fletcher was wiping his hands on a rag at the auto shop where he worked weekends when she walked in. He didn't recognize her at first. Her hair was tied up now, her outfit more casual, though still expensive. But her eyes, a deep hazel with flecks of gold, sparked something in his memory. "I think I owe you a thank you," she said, standing in front of the counter. "You gave me your parking spot at North Pine Preschool, Tuesday morning. I was late for a board meeting and probably would have cried in my car if I missed drop-off." Fletcher blinked, surprised she remembered. "Oh. Yeah, that was nothing, just paying it forward." She smiled then, something genuine and warm. "I'm Callie Zanders." "Fletcher Cole," he said, offering his grease-stained hand. She hesitated for a second before taking it anyway. "Are you Zane's dad?" He nodded, and her eyes crinkled a little. "My niece Ellie is in the same class. I do drop-offs when my sister's traveling. She's in Europe this month." He nodded again, unsure what else to say. He wasn't used to women like her, polished, confident, probably living in a high-rise downtown. "Well," she said, glancing around the shop, "I was actually wondering if you do private work. My car started making this weird sound and I'd rather not deal with a dealership." Fletcher hesitated. "I mean, yeah, I can take a look." "Perfect," she said, pulling out a card, gold lettering. CEO Zanders Enterprises, his eyebrows lifted. "Wait, you're a CEO?" She grinned. "I know, doesn't go with the preschool chaos, huh?" He let out a laugh before he could stop himself. "Not what I pictured when I saw you sprinting in heels." Callie laughed too, then looked at him for a long moment. "Tell you what, you fix my car and I'll buy you dinner." Fletcher blinked. "What, dinner?" she said, tilting her head. "You know, food." "You do eat, right?" He stared at her, stunned. "You want to take me out?" Something flickered in her eyes. "Unless you'd rather not." He opened his mouth, closed it, then finally said, "No, I mean yes, yeah, sure." She smiled again, slower this time. Good, dinner wasn't what he expected. He thought she'd pick a downtown place, where he'd feel out of place in his second-hand button-down. But she chose a small Italian bistro in the Queen Anne district, candlelit and cozy, tucked between a bookstore and a florist. She wore a simple black blouse and jeans, her hair down, soft waves brushing her shoulders. They talked, really talked, about Zane and how Fletcher never planned to be a single dad at 25, about her company and how she inherited it after her father passed away suddenly 2 years ago, about pressure, loneliness, and trying to be everything to everyone, He wasn't used to someone like her listening so closely, watching him like he mattered, and she wasn't used to someone who spoke without trying to impress her. "Most guys either hit on me for the money or get weird about it," she admitted as they lingered over espresso and tiramisu. "You didn't even blink when you saw the title on my card." "I was still processing the part where you remembered me from the preschool lot," he said, grinning. She laughed. "I remember kindness. It's rare." He looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time in years, he felt something shift in his chest, something unfamiliar and terrifying and exciting all at once. The next few weeks were a blur of something Fletcher hadn't felt in years: hope. Callie started showing up to the shop with coffee. He made her laugh over engine diagnostics. She helped him navigate preschool forms. He took her and Ellie to the park with Zane. They weren't dating, not officially, but something was building between them, something real. One Friday night, she invited him to a gala her company was sponsoring. "You don't have to go," she said quickly. I'd like you there." Fletcher stared at the invitation in his hand. The event was at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel, black tie, champagne, and $1 million donors. He didn't belong in that world, but he wanted to be near her. "I'll rent a tux," he said. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, silver cutlery, and crystal glasses. Fletcher had never felt more out of place, but when Callie walked in, wearing a midnight blue gown that hugged her body and made the whole room pause, none of that mattered. She walked straight to him, eyes soft. "You clean up nice, Mr. Cole," he smiled, unable to look away. "You look unreal." They danced. Under the lights, with 100 strangers watching, they danced like they were the only two people in the world. When she leaned in and pressed her mouth to his, slow and sure, Fletcher forgot every reason he shouldn't fall for her. And when she pulled away, her voice barely above a whisper, he already knew. "I think I'm falling for you, Fletcher." He didn't hesitate. "Then you're not alone." Fletcher adjusted the collar of his borrowed tuxedo as Callie's fingers slipped into his. The ballroom buzzed with polite laughter, clinking glasses, and the kind of casual opulence he'd only seen in movies. Her hand fit so naturally in his, but everything around him felt foreign. They didn't speak much after the dance. Words would have only dulled the gravity of that kiss. When she finally drove him back to his place, her black sedan a quiet cocoon between two worlds, he leaned over, hand resting lightly on her wrist. "I don't know what this is," he said, voice low, "but I don't want to walk away from it." She nodded, her gaze fixed on the steering wheel as though afraid if she looked at him again, she might say too much. "Neither do I." The next morning, Fletcher woke up to the sound of Zane banging two toy dinosaurs together. The gala felt like a dream, shiny, perfect, impossible. But then his phone buzzed with a message from Callie asking if he and Zane wanted to meet her and Ellie at the aquarium. Something ordinary, something real, that became their rhythm. They explored the city like it was their own secret map. Fish feeding mornings at the aquarium, late afternoon walks through the sculpture park, evenings with takeout containers balanced on their knees while the kids built pillow forts in Callie's condo. She stopped wearing heels when she picked them up. He started carrying an extra hoodie for Ellie in the backseat, but nothing about it was simple beneath the surface. Fletcher noticed it first when she hesitated answering calls during dinner. Her voice clipped when she excused herself to take them. Her laugh didn't quite reach her eyes when she returned to the table. She tried to hide it, but he saw the weight pressing against her shoulders. "You don't have to pretend with me," he said one night as she stood barefoot in his kitchen, staring into a mug of untouched tea. "I'm not pretending," she said, but her voice was too fast, too bright. "Callie." She looked up, and for the first time he saw the exhaustion there, not physical, something deeper. "I'm trying to keep the board from forcing a merger I don't believe in," she said finally. "They think I'm too young, too emotional. I've spent 2 years proving I'm not just my father's daughter, and now they're trying to drown me in paperwork and politics." He reached for her mug and set it down. "You don't have to carry that alone." She stared at him like no one had ever said that before. "I've always carried it alone," she whispered. "It's how I survive." "Maybe it's time to stop surviving," he said, "and start living." She didn't answer. But she stayed that night, curled up on the couch beside him, Zane's blanket thrown over their legs while the credits rolled on an old movie. For a while, it felt like something steady was building between them. a slow unfolding. But Fletcher had learned long ago that nothing stays simple for long. It started with the article. He was walking Zane home from preschool when his phone buzzed with a text from a friend at the shop. "You're in the paper," it read, followed by a blurry photo of a headline. Seattle's youngest CEO linked to mechanic dad. His stomach dropped. The article wasn't kind. It speculated about their relationship with the kind of thinly veiled judgment that left no doubt about its disapproval. "From the penthouse to the parking lot," it said. "Sources say Callie Zanders has been slumming it with a blue-collar single father." There was a grainy photo of them outside the aquarium, Zane on his shoulders, her laughing beside them. Fletcher didn't finish the article. When he got to Callie's building, the doorman gave him a tight smile but didn't stop him. She met him in the hall, phone in hand, face pale. "I didn't know they were following us," she said. "Doesn't matter," he replied, voice low. "It does. This is my world, Fletcher." "I should have protected you from it," he stepped back. "I don't need protecting, I just didn't think I'd be your scandal of the month." Her expression cracked. "You think I'm using you? I think there's a reason you never told anyone about us, not the board, not the press. Not even your sister." She took a step forward, then stopped. "You don't understand what it's like. One wrong move and they'll tear me apart. They already are. And what am I supposed to do? Hide every time someone might take a photo? I'm trying to keep you safe." "No," he said, jaw clenched. "You're trying to keep me quiet." The silence between them stretched. She reached for his hand, but he pulled away. "I can't be your secret, Callie." "You're not," she said, voice shaking. "You're everything I don't know how to say out loud," but it was too late. He picked up Zane and walked away. Days passed, then a week, then another. He didn't hear from her. The silence carved into him like ice. He threw himself into work, took on extra shifts, spent more time at the park with Zane, but everything felt quieter, dimmer. Then one afternoon, he got a call from an unknown number. "Mr. Cole," a woman's voice asked. "This is Allison Walker. I'm Callie Zanders' executive assistant." His heart dropped. "Is she okay?" She's in the hospital." "What?" She collapsed in a board meeting this morning. Exhaustion. Apparently she hasn't slept properly in days. Fletcher was out the door before she could finish. By the time he reached the hospital, Callie was sitting up in bed, a drip in her arm and dark circles under her eyes. She looked smaller, somehow less armor, more skin and bone. "You shouldn't be here," she said when he stepped inside. "You really think I wouldn't come?" She didn't answer. He sat beside her, watching the heart monitor blink in slow, steady rhythm. "I read the rest of the article," he said. "The part where they questioned your judgment, your leadership. Your heart." "I've worked so hard to be taken seriously," she said, her voice barely audible. "And the minute I let myself be happy, they used it against me." He reached for her hand. This time she didn't pull away. "I don't care what they say, I care about you." Tears welled in her eyes. "I thought if I kept you separate from all this, I could protect what we had, but all I did was ruin it." "No," he said softly. "You just made a mistake, when I've made myself thinking love has to come second to survival." She looked at him then, eyes wide and searching. "Do you still feel it?" "Even after everything?" He leaned forward, brushing his lips gently against her temple. "Every single second." Outside the hospital window, the city moved on. Traffic lights changed, people hurried past, but inside that room, something held still. Something started to heal. And for the first time, Fletcher didn't feel like he was just passing through her world. He belonged in it. The first time Callie stepped into Fletcher's home after the hospital, she didn't wear heels. She didn't bring her leather folder or check her phone every 2 minutes. She walked in holding a paper bag of groceries, and a look that said she didn't know what came next, but she was ready to find out. "I didn't know what Zane liked," she said, setting the bag on the kitchen counter. "So I bought 3 different kinds of cereal and way too many snacks." Fletcher leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching her unpack boxes of crackers and mini juice bottles like it was the most natural thing in the world. But nothing about it felt ordinary. Not the careful way she placed things in his half-empty cupboards, or the soft glances she sent his way when she thought he wasn't looking. "You didn't have to do all this." "I know." He stepped forward and took a box from her hands. "But you did." Their eyes met, and for a moment neither of them moved. Then a soft thump from the hallway broke the silence. Zane running in with his shoelaces untied and a plastic dinosaur clutched in one hand. "Callie," he shouted, flinging his arms around her waist. She crouched down and hugged him tightly. "Hey you, I missed you. I found T-Rex again. He was under the couch." "Of course he was," she said, ruffling his hair. "Where all the best things hide." Later that night, after Zane had fallen asleep on the couch mid-movie, Callie sat beside Fletcher with a cup of tea and bare feet tucked under her. The TV flickered quietly, but neither of them paid it much attention. "I'm stepping down as CEO," she said. Fletcher turned to her, caught off guard. "What? I'm not walking away from the company," she added quickly. "But I'm shifting roles. I'll still hold my shares, still vote on the board, but I hired a new managing director to run day-to-day operations." He searched her face. "Why?" "Because I've been pretending I had to prove something, that I could live up to my father's name, beat the board at their own game, make the company stronger than ever without breaking. But I was breaking." She looked down at her hands, fingers curled around the mug. "I thought that if I let go, it meant I failed, but the truth is, I can't be everything to everyone, and I don't want to be." Fletcher didn't say anything. He just reached over and gently took her hand in his. "I want to build something that's mine, something meaningful. And I want it to include you." He looked at her, really looked, and saw none of the polished armor he'd first noticed, just the woman who had chosen to show up again and again, even when it was hard. "You sure about that?" he asked quietly. "I've never been more sure of anything." The next morning, everything changed. It started with a knock at the garage. Fletcher was underneath a rusted-out pickup. Grease streaked on his forearms when a man in a tailored gray suit stepped inside without waiting to be invited. His shoes didn't belong anywhere near oil-stained concrete. "Mr. Cole?" the man asked. Fletcher wiped his hands on a rag and stood. "Yeah," the man reached into his coat and pulled out a folder. "I'm here on behalf of Zanders Enterprises, Miss. Zanders has transferred ownership of one of her commercial properties to your name, downtown, fully zoned, renovated last year. She said you'd know what to do with it." Fletcher stared at the man, not moving. "She gave me a building. Technically, yes. She signed over the deed this morning." He took the folder with numb fingers and opened it. Inside were property documents, legal transfers, a letter with her handwriting. "I believe in what you're building. I want to help you build it bigger. No strings, just possibility." When the man left, Fletcher sat on the edge of the workbench for a long time, staring at the papers in his lap. That night, he showed up at her condo unannounced. She opened the door barefoot, a towel slung over her shoulder and the smell of pasta drifting from the kitchen. "You gave me a building," he said, holding up the folder. She nodded, lips pressed together. "I know you didn't ask for it. I wasn't trying to buy you. Callie," she stopped. "I don't care about the building. I care about why you did it. I did it because you've spent your whole life building things for other people. I wanted you to have something that was yours, something that didn't come with limits or conditions. I wanted you to have space to dream." He stepped closer, his voice quiet. "You are the dream," her breath caught. "I've been afraid," he said. "Afraid I wasn't enough, that if I stepped into your world I'd lose mine. You won't." He reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I want to build something with you, Callie, not just a shop. A life." She leaned in slowly, her forehead resting against his. "Then let's start today." The next weeks moved fast. The building she gave him became the foundation for something more than he'd ever imagined. He turned it into a full-service repair and restoration garage, clean lines, modern bays, a waiting area with real coffee and a play corner for kids. He hired 2 mechanics and trained a third. Zane came with him on Saturdays, riding his scooter through the halls while Fletcher worked under hoods. Callie visited often, not in power suits but in jeans and soft sweaters, clipboard in one hand, Ellie in the other. She helped him design the layout, introduced him to vendors, and connected him with a nonprofit that offered discounted services to single parents. But it wasn't just business. It was late-night dinners at his place, the kids asleep on the floor after building forts from couch cushions. It was grocery store trips and shared calendars and whispered confessions between stolen kisses. It was real. One night, after a long day at the garage, Fletcher found her outside on the balcony of her condo, arms folded on the railing, the skyline glittering behind her. I used to think love had to look a certain way, she said as he stepped up beside her. Grand, perfect, polished. He glanced at her. And now, she smiled. Now I know it just has to be honest. He slipped his arm around her waist, pulling her close. Then we're doing all right. She turned to face him, her eyes searching. You ever think about what this would have looked like if we'd met in different circumstances? He shook his head. I think we met exactly how we were meant to. At a moment when neither of us expected it, but both of us needed it. She leaned in slowly, kissing him with a tenderness that stole the breath from his lungs. When they pulled apart, she whispered, "Don't ever let me go. Not a chance." And in that moment, standing under the stars with the city pulsing around them, Fletcher knew he hadn't just found love, he'd found home. The wind swept off the Puget Sound as Fletcher stood beneath the long awning of the building that now bore his name in brushed steel lettering. Cole and Company Auto Restoration. The sun had just dipped low, gilding the clouds orange. Inside, the lights glowed warmly, illuminating polished floors, state-of-the-art equipment, and the framed photo Callie had insisted on hanging behind the front desk. Zane and Ellie sitting on the hood of a rebuilt Mustang, both of them laughing, hair tangled in the breeze. He hadn't seen her since the ribbon-cutting ceremony 3 days ago. She had smiled for photographs, stood beside him as reporters asked the expected questions, and kissed his cheek when the last camera was packed away. But there had been something different in her eyes, not distance but a decision. Something she hadn't said yet. Now he ran a hand through his hair and glanced up as her car pulled into the lot. She stepped out, wearing a soft gray coat, her expression unreadable. Not guarded, but quiet. She crossed the lot slowly, her heels clicking against the pavement, stopping just short of him. "I spoke with my sister," she said without preamble. He nodded once, waiting. She'd mentioned a strained relationship, complicated by the company's legacy and the choices they'd both made after their father's death. But she'd never gone farther than that. She wants to give up her stake in the company. She's moving to Italy, permanently. He raised an eyebrow. "That's sudden." She said watching me take a step back made her realize she's been clinging to something neither of us wanted. He studied her. "And what do you want, Callie?" She looked up at him, eyes steady. "Not suits, not quarterly projections. Not rooms full of people waiting for me to prove I belong." He didn't speak. He wanted her to keep going. "I want a life that isn't built on apology," she said. "I want mornings where I don't check 5 calendars before breakfast. I want to walk into school plays without wondering if someone will take a picture and twist it into something ugly." She stepped closer, voice lower. "And I want you." He breathed in slowly, the tension he hadn't realized he was holding beginning to dissolve. "I'm selling the penthouse," she added. "I found a house near Green Lake, something with a yard and a kitchen that needs too much work." He blinked. "You're moving?" "I'm starting over, not running, choosing." She tilted her head. "You said you wanted to build a life." "I'm ready." He reached for her hand, threading their fingers together. "So am I," she exhaled, the sound soft and sure. "Then let's stop waiting." They spent the following weeks in motion, not chaotic but deliberate. Fletcher helped her paint the new house, his shirt streaked with color as Zane and Ellie chased each other through empty rooms. They built bookshelves, replaced cabinet handles, and argued over light fixtures in the middle of crowded hardware stores. It was ordinary, and it was perfect. One evening, he came home to find Callie in the backyard, kneeling in the dirt with Ellie beside her, both of them elbow-deep in flower beds. Zane was on the porch, painting a birdhouse with exaggerated concentration. "You're going to scare the neighbors," he joked, leaning against the railing as she wiped sweat from her brow. She looked up, grinning. "Too late." Ellie said hi to everyone on the block and asked if they knew how compost worked. He laughed, heart full. "You ever think about how fast this happened?" She stood, brushing soil off her jeans. "Not really. I think about how right it feels." That night, as twilight settled over the street, they sat on a blanket in the backyard with their kids sleeping inside and the last of the summer air curling around them. Fletcher turned to her, his voice quiet. "I've never asked you for anything," she glanced at him. "You've given me everything. I want to do this right, Callie, not because I need to prove something, but because I want the world to know you're it for me." She looked at him, Eyes wide and shining, he pulled a small box from his pocket. No velvet, no spotlight, just a simple, elegant band with a single diamond. It caught the moonlight like her eyes always did. I love you. I love Zane and Ellie chasing each other through the house. I love fixing sinks and arguing over paint colors and making waffles at 5 in the morning because no one can sleep. I love every quiet moment and every loud one. I want more of it, forever. She didn't cry. She didn't hesitate. Yes, she said, her voice steady. Yes. 1,000 times. The wedding wasn't grand, but it was unforgettable. They held it in the garden behind their house, under a lattice of blooming jasmine and strings of soft lights. Friends from the garage came in their cleanest shirts, and Callie's assistant cried through most of the ceremony. Zane walked her down the aisle, his tie slightly crooked, Ellie tossing petals like she was born for the stage. Callie wore a dress that whispered when she moved. Nothing extravagant, just a graceful silhouette in soft ivory. Fletcher wore a tailored navy suit that Callie had chosen herself, and when he turned to see her, his breath caught. They said their vows barefoot on the grass, hands clasped, hearts full. I never expected to find love in a parking lot, she said, her voice trembling at the edges. But I found you, and you made me believe in more than survival. You gave me a home, he smiled, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. I never thought the love of my life would come out of a car I let pass me by, but you weren't just passing through, you stopped. You stayed. Their kiss was met with laughter and applause and the sound of Ellie shouting, "Now we can have cake." Later, after the sun dipped below the horizon and the guests had trickled home, Callie and Fletcher danced slowly beneath the string lights, the soft hush of the night wrapping around them. "This is everything I didn't know I wanted," she whispered against his shoulder. He held her close, his voice low. "This is everything I didn't believe I deserved." She leaned back, meeting his gaze. "You deserve all of it. And more." He kissed her, slow and deep, sealing every vow and every moment between them. From that day forward, no one questioned how they fit. Not because they had to explain it, but because the way he looked at her when she laughed, the way she leaned into him when no one was watching, it said everything. And when the world moved on, as it always did, they stayed two people who met in the chaos of a rushed morning, but found something neither of them had ever truly known: peace, partnership, love forever. Rain fell softly against the windows of the new house, the kind of steady drizzle that turned the garden into a watercolor and made the whole street smell like earth and cedar. Fletcher stood in the kitchen barefoot, sleeves rolled to his elbows, whisking pancake batter while Zane sat at the counter drawing rocket ships on a napkin. Callie padded in, wearing an oversized sweatshirt that had once belonged to him and her reading glasses perched on her nose. She leaned against the counter, watching them both. "You're using the wrong whisk," she said, her voice still thick with sleep. Fletcher glanced at her over his shoulder. "I didn't know there were levels of whisking expertise." "There are," she replied, crossing to the drawer and pulling out the one with the red handle. "This one doesn't clump, trust me." He handed over the bowl reluctantly. "You're starting to sound like a professional. I've been watching cooking tutorials," she said, stirring the batter with practiced flicks. "I'm tired of ordering takeout for everything more complicated than toast." Zane set his crayon down. "Can we make those cinnamon things again?" Callie smiled. "Only if your dad agrees to let me take over breakfast duty twice a week." Fletcher raised an eyebrow. "You're negotiating with a 4-year-old now," she gave him a look. "He drives a hard bargain." They ate on the couch, wrapped in blankets, watching cartoons. Fletcher leaned his head back, his arms stretched behind Callie as she pressed her feet under his leg to warm them. The simplicity of it all struck him: no deadlines, no court dates, no waiting for the other shoe to drop. Just warmth, laughter, and the quiet rhythm of a life they'd built one messy, beautiful moment at a time. Later that afternoon, Callie took Ellie to her dance class while Fletcher and Zane went to the garage. The business had taken on a life of its own: steady clients, a growing reputation, and a waiting list for custom restoration work that stretched into the next season. But he still made time for the small jobs. Oil changes, tire rotations, things that reminded him where he came from. When Callie met him at the shop after closing, she looked different, lighter somehow. She walked straight to him, her shoes echoing across the bay floor, and held out a folded piece of paper. "I got into the program," she said, eyes bright. He took it, scanning the letter. "The Small Business Mentorship one," she nodded. "They only accept 15 applicants a year, and they want me to speak at their opening summit." Fletcher grinned. "You're going to crush it," she hesitated. "It's in Napa, 3 days." He set the letter down. "We'll be fine here." Callie looked at him, really looked. "You sure?" "I want you to go," he said. "Not because you need to prove anything, but because you've got something to say and people should hear it." She breathed out slowly. "How did I get so lucky?" He stepped closer, brushing a thumb along her cheekbone. "I ask myself the same thing every morning." The night before her trip, Fletcher surprised her with dinner on the back porch, candles, fairy lights strung between the posts, and a meal he'd cooked himself with more enthusiasm than skill. She laughed when she saw the slightly burned garlic bread but said nothing, just kissed him and sat down. After the plates were cleared and the kids were asleep, they sat wrapped in a quilt, her head resting on his chest. "I'm scared," she whispered. He didn't ask why, he knew. "Not of the trip," she continued. "Of how much I want this, all of it, you, the kids, the future. I keep waiting for something to go wrong." He kissed her hair. "Nothing's going wrong, not this time." "I keep thinking about what I used to believe love had to look like," she said. "Clean lines. No risk, all logic." And now, she looked up at him. "Now I know it's messy, loud, sometimes completely terrifying, but it's worth every second." He reached into his pocket, heart pounding. "I was going to wait," he said. She blinked. "Wait for what?" He pulled out a small velvet box, worn at the edges from where he'd held it too many times, unsure if the moment was right. "For this." Her breath hitched as he opened it. A ring, simple, timeless. A single stone set in a band of brushed gold. "I don't have a speech," he said. "I don't have the perfect words, but I do have this life. And I want to spend every second of it with you, not just the easy ones, all of them. Will you marry me?" She didn't cry. She didn't pause. She said yes. And when he slid the ring onto her finger, something settled inside both of them like the final piece of a puzzle they'd been chasing for years without knowing it. The wedding came 6 months later in a sun-drenched garden overlooking Green Lake. Not lavish, not staged. Just them, their closest friends, and the 2 kids who had brought them together before they even knew what they were becoming. Zane carried the rings inside his vest pocket. Ellie read a poem she'd written herself, dramatic and heartfelt, her voice trembling with pride. Fletcher wore a navy suit. Callie wore a dress the color of champagne, her hair pinned with wildflowers. When they said their vows, no one made a sound. Not because it was solemn, but because it was sacred. "I promise to choose you," Fletcher said. "Not just today, but every day, when it's simple, when it's hard. When we're laughing and when we're learning, I promise you all of me." "I promise to keep building with you," Callie replied. "To say yes to the quiet moments, the loud ones, the imperfect ones. To be your partner, your home, your family." Their kiss was met with cheers, confetti made from dried petals, and Zane shouting that he was hungry. They danced under open skies, barefoot and fearless, surrounded by people who had watched them become something more than just lucky. They became whole. Months passed. Then seasons. Zane started kindergarten. Ellie discovered a love for painting and began selling her art at the local farmers market. Callie began consulting for other startups, helping young women launch businesses without sacrificing themselves in the process. Fletcher expanded the garage, opening a second location with a training program attached. They made Sunday dinners a ritual. They argued over music playlists, took road trips with no destination, and built a bookshelf together that tilted slightly to the left but held everything just the same. And on a quiet evening, years later, Fletcher stood in the same backyard where he'd asked her to marry him, watching Zane and Ellie chase fireflies while Callie curled into his side, her head resting on his shoulder. "You ever think about how close we came to missing this?" she asked. "Every day. I almost didn't take the parking spot that morning. I almost didn't wave you in," she laughed softly. "Fate's weird." He kissed her temple. "Fate's brilliant." The stars came out one by one and the world slowed around them. And in the quiet that followed, there was nothing left to chase, just love, just home forever.